Since the Second World War, it has been the focus of our worst fears. The cauldron where the nuclear apocalypse was most likely to begin. The place where the dividing line between East and West has been marked in concrete blocks and barbed wire. Our focus tonight, Berlin, the Wall, Checkpoint Charlie, the symbols of the Cold War. Is it possible that today those images have all become things of the past?
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
There'll be some hangovers in Berlin in the morning, and not just because of tonight's celebration. The Wall, which is probably already in danger of being purchased by some American entrepreneur to be broken up and sold following a massive own your own relic of the Cold War advertising campaign, the Wall is, for all of our optimism, still there. And in a few hours, you will no longer see what you are watching right now. That is, enthusiastic young Berliners climbing all over the Wall from both sides. The Germans are, after all, an orderly people. And in another couple of hours, 8 o'clock Friday morning, Berlin time, order will be restored. There will be no more unchecked crossings. And those who do want to cross will need visas. That, at least, is what East German radio is saying tonight. Whether the East German government can still impose its will remains an open question. But whatever happens, this, as our senior foreign correspondent, Barry Dunsmore, reports, has been a day to remember.
What would really happen if the Berlin Wall came down was the perennial question. Tonight, we are getting the answer. Berliners, East and West, are celebrating a moment they have been dreaming about since the wall went up 28 years ago. These were among the first East Berliners to come across. They said they'd never been here before and just wanted to see what it was like. Since then, East Berliners have been streaming through the checkpoint. There have been parties on the Kurfürstendamm, West Berlin's most famous street. They've been living it up at the Brandenburg Gate, the symbol of divided Germany. People chanted, "Away with the wall." That wall still stands, but it's no longer relevant. At one point, East German border guards literally tried to pour cold water on the party by spraying wall climbers with water hoses. If they were trying to make people unhappy, it didn't work. In East Berlin, when the news first broke, the reaction was disbelief. Jens Reich is one of the founders of the opposition group New Forum.
I didn't consider them capable, and it's, of course, they yield to the pressure, to the will of the people. I must say it was my proposal already years ago, and everybody laughed me off and said it's impossible. I said simply open and look what happens.
This young man was worried that everyone would leave. The young lady said no, people would just go back and forth, and that would be great. In a sense, that defines the gamble that the East Germans have taken by opening the gates. Namely, if people can leave, they won't feel compelled to do so. And there were two other developments today which were very important parts of that gamble. East German leader Egon Krenz said in a speech to the Central Committee that there would be free and fair elections with a secret ballot. This is a major concession. And the opposition group New Forum, which now has tens of thousands of members, was told today that its application to be legalized had been approved. And so in one day, East Germans have been given the possibility of free elections. They've been given a political party that might have a chance against the communists. They've been told they can travel freely. And what's more, Moscow said that's okay. It's been quite a day. Ted?
Barry, all of those people still behind you, and they have been there now throughout the night. It is almost dawn in Berlin now. What are they about? What do they want to do? The East Germans who have come over, are they people who have come over and want to stay, or people who just want to come over and sneak a peek and then go back?
Well, Ted, as you know, there's an incredible curiosity that the East Germans have for West Germany, and particularly for West Berlin. The first couple that came over said, we just wanted to see what it was like. I think a lot of people will come, take a look, and certainly the gamble is on the part of the East Germans that having done so, they will return.
Barry, you and I have been friends and colleagues for a great many years, and for almost all of that time, we have been covering essentially the same story. That is the conflict between East and West, all of which was symbolized by that wall right behind you, the division between the East and West, and the fear that someday those two powers would come into conflict with one another. Are we really getting a little bit carried away by all the champagne bottles and those wonderful young people there clearly having the time of their lives? Or is this one of those pivotal moments in history that people will still be writing about 50 years from now?
I believe it's the latter, Ted. I think we sometimes haven't been willing to accept the fact that Mikhail Gorbachev has a very different plan for his country and for the world than any other Soviet leader. And I really think we are beginning something very different. You and I will have other things to do, no doubt, but this one is definitely and profoundly changing.
Barry Dunsmore, thank you. During our broadcast tonight, we hope to bring you a live interview with at least one person who has just come over from East Germany. And we will also go live to Moscow and get a reaction from a Soviet journalist and commentator. And finally, a look at the Berlin Wall's bitter history as we talk with a former official in the Kennedy White House who was there at the time the wall was built. But first, when we come back, we will have Secretary of State James Baker as he talks about U.S. hopes and the astonishing role played by the Soviet Union.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by MCI.
Friday on 2020, banned for life from baseball. Now Pete Rose faces the music, the public, and Barbara Walters on 2020 Friday.
With us now, joining us live from West Berlin, is an East German resident who came over today. Her name, Corinna Bolt. Why did you come?
I come from East Berlin.
No, I know where you came from. My question is, why? Warum? Why did you come over this evening?
Because I want to look. I'm the first time in West Berlin now. And we came 2 hours ago here.
And what have you seen?
The wall. On the other side.
Does it look very different from the west side than it did on the east side?
Oh, it's more anarchy, I think, on this side.
More anarchic on this side? More.
Yeah.
Have you had a
And
chance?
it's fun.
It's fun, yes. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly, the fun that you have all been having there.
A little bit slow, please.
I will.
A little bit.
It is clear that you have all been having fun there this evening, but is it your intention to go back to East Berlin in the morning?
Yeah. I stand up and in the evening we hear that the wall is open and then we go here.
Now, is this just a one-night visit? Are you going back again when daylight breaks, or are you going to stay in the West now?
No, I go back.
And what about your long-term intentions? Do you ever plan to come and live in the West, or do you intend to
Please repeat.
Do you
repeat
intend
the last one.
Yes, do you intend to go on living in East Germany, or someday do you want to come back to the West?
Maybe I come back to the West. I think the wall is open now, and I think the next things will be we need an allied conference with the two German states, and they must discuss a solution of this problem.
All right, Corinna Bolt, thank you very much for joining us. Have a nice night,
Yeah.
and
Thank you.
hope to see you in the West again.
Yeah, thanks.
Secretary of State James Baker was on hand at the White House earlier today when President Bush gave reporters his own cautious but clearly positive assessment of East Germany's decision to open its borders. When we talked with Secretary Baker a little later, we noted how swiftly the turnaround in East German policy has developed. I don't know if you've had much musing time over the last few weeks, but muse for me a little about, harken back 6 weeks. There was Gorbachev in East Berlin. Next thing you know, poor old Honecker's gone. And then Honecker's successor goes off to Moscow. Next thing you know, East Germany is being turned inside out.
What's Gorbachev had to do with all of this?
It's very, very rapid change, isn't it?
Sure is.
Very dynamic. I think that the Soviet Union has had a significant amount to do with it. During the course of the meetings I've had with the foreign minister, Shevardnadze, he's made it very clear to me that they support the process of reform in Eastern Europe, just as they support reform in the Soviet Union. I think they have concluded that that's what's going to be required if they are going to succeed with perestroika. And I thought it was interesting today to see that one of the first countries out welcoming this development today was the Soviet Union.
Well, in fact, your counterpart spokesman, Gennady Gerasimov, made the point that they don't even care if there are multi-party elections as long as East Germany stays within the Warsaw Pact. Now, one gets the sense that the Russians have been doing more than just sort of standing by saying, well, go ahead, guys, do whatever you want to do, because what the East Germans wanted to do was hang tough.
Well, I think originally they did want to hang tough. I believe that as well. But I think that the Soviets have in fact encouraged reform. I think that they see the direction in which the pendulum is swinging. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that they see reform as key to their success in the Soviet Union and therefore key to success in Eastern Europe.
Explain that to me. Why? What does Gorbachev get out of this in his long-term plan?
Well, I think the why is that the why is answered by the fact that the old system has failed, and they recognize it. I mean, I think that's why. Why reform? Because the old system isn't working.
But there's a bigger why about East Germany, Mr. Secretary. Forgive me for interrupting. And the bigger why is, if you have a democratic East Germany, there is no longer any reason for having an East Germany. You might just as well have a Germany.
Well, that is the case, of course, with East Germany, and it is particularly unique in that respect among the countries of Eastern Europe. You're quite right. And that gets you then to the question of, well, how do you square that with the Soviet suggestion that everything is okay except leaving the Warsaw Pact? And that's an issue that will have to be addressed at some point. We can't address it yet. It is premature to address it yet. But it's one that we're aware of and one that we have to contemplate.
Can't imagine that the Soviets would be, altogether at ease with the notion of a reunified Germany, can you?
It's difficult to square that with the suggestion that everything is fine except leaving the Warsaw Pact.
Yeah.
So how do you get a reunified Germany without that? Again, it's premature for us to take that jump. We've just had a very, very important development, but it is sort of, in some respects, a first step. They haven't gotten as yet to free elections in East Germany. Hopefully they'll ultimately get to that.
I don't know what, which one you want to use, the genie back in the bottle or the toothpaste back in the tube, but is there any way that they can turn this thing back?
Not in my view. I think that when people taste the fruits of freedom, you're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. I think it'll move progressively toward more and more freedom, which is what we in the West have been advocating for a long, long time. That doesn't necessarily mean complete instability or chaos or bloodshed or violence. And of course, what we very much want to happen is for there to be movement toward freedom in all the countries of Eastern Europe, toward the values that we hold dear, but we'd like to see that happen in peace and freedom. And we want to see it take place peacefully. Because instability in terms of bloodshed and violence is not in the interests of in Eastern Europe, in any of the countries of Eastern Europe, or in the Soviet Union, is not in the interests of the United States.
The people who are leaving are not the old people now. They're young, they're educated, they're absolutely vital and essential to the survival of a fit East Germany. But by the same token, the numbers are now getting to be so huge that you have to wonder, how many is enough? Balance that off for me for a moment.
I think one of the reasons we see this announcement today is because the people who are leaving are the young and the skilled and people that, frankly, the German Democratic Republic doesn't want to do without. And that's one of the main reasons, I think, that you see this happening. Now, I don't have a crystal ball that would tell me how much is too much in terms of people migrating from East Germany to West Germany to create problems for either. Clearly, there is some question about the capacity of the Federal Republic of Germany to absorb all these people. Our sense is that there may be 175,000 already, maybe a little more than that. So I can't answer your question about at what point does it become a matter of serious, really serious concern.
Let me put it in another context. Only a few years ago, before your watch, but even during your watch, there was a sense that we could always beat the Soviet horse by saying, let the Soviets who want to leave, especially the Soviet Jews who want to leave, let them come out. And they started coming out and coming out and coming out in such numbers that your department here has now had to put certain restrictions on how and under what circumstances Soviet Jews can come into this country. You think we're going to be put into the awkward position, or that the Germans are going to be put into the awkward position, that they may have to say, come on, guys, enough is enough. We can't take all these people.
I can't answer that, but it is a very appropriate question. With respect to Soviet Jews, of course, we are to some extent the victims of our own success. We would hope that that would not be the case with respect to people seeking to go from East Germany to West Germany, but who knows? I can't answer that.
Are you a little bit nervous, as the custodian of America's foreign policy, of a Europe that is about to become a unified Europe, with very possibly a unified Germany at its center? That is a formidable power.
The President spoke to that in his trip to the 40th anniversary of NATO in Mainz, Germany, when he said, we want a Europe that is whole and a Europe that is free. And that continues to be our goal. It's been our goal for a long time. It is the goal of this administration, continues to be the goal of this administration. The only caveat is that we want to see that achieved peacefully. We don't want to see it achieved in any other way. And I think that it's not something that should concern us. It's something that we should favor and strive for.
For so many years now, Berlin has been, to us, sort of the symbol of the Cold War, of a divided Europe, of the sort of the clash point, perhaps even the place where World War III would begin between East and West. Is it time for the world to sigh, not only a huge sigh of relief, but remember that clock that the nuclear scientists had, that, 2 minutes to midnight, 3 minutes to midnight? Is it time to push that clock